an engine of war. Long before Pearl Harbor, the American railroads, ever conscious of the gathering clouds of conflict, worked out a plan of unified and immediate action should this nation be forced to accept the challenge of aggression. To their everlasting credit, this careful planning was not to be in vain, for suddenly the infamous blow was struck. And overnight, engines of peace and progress were transformed into engines of war in a conflict unparalleled in the annals of human history. The die had been cast. The decencies of mankind were the stakes, and squarely upon the success or failure of the American railroads rested the fate of the nation, for only that nation possessed of adequate rail transport could hope to survive the ordeal of total war. But did this nation possess adequate transport facilities? Could Santa Fe shoulder her share of the tremendous burden? Would Santa Fe meet the strain of wartime traffic without delay or confusion? Well, as man can best be judged by worth of deed, let us look at the record. When the green light for military movement was signaled on that fateful day in December, the American railroads became the supply lines to the battlefronts, the strong arm of the home front. With a well-trained, determined army of more than 1 million workers, they were of the very first to enlist in the common cause for the duration. The order that came flashing over the wires was short, but to the point. Move all available equipment to military bases without delay. A large order? Yes. But the dispatch and smoothness with which this urgent request was carried out will long stand a record of enviable achievement, a record which future generations of railroad employees will ever regard with respect and awe, a record of free men and private enterprise. For without seriously disrupting existing schedules, long lines of baggage cars, sleeping cars, box cars, and coaches were assembled and rushed to widely separated military bases. Every available crew was mustered, engineers, firemen, brakemen, men who willingly returned to work 2, in many instances 3 and 4 shifts, without thought of personal well-being. There was a job to be done, a job that had to be done, a job that would be done. And even before Congress could gather to declare a formal state of war to exist, the armed might of these free and indivisible United States was already gathering momentum. Rail equipment was backed onto sidings, awaiting only the signal from inspecting officers to receive their urgent cargoes, to get started rolling in the greatest mass movement of troops and equipment in the history of this or any nation. Flat car after flat car, loaded with speed and precision. Utility cars, scout cars, heavy trucks, tanks, jeeps, peeps, tank destroyers. Hundreds of fighting vehicles rumbling endlessly. Countless tons of steel and firepower rolling aboard and into riding position. There to be blocked and nailed and wired and secured by hands which had long trained for this very day. Then came division after division, thousands upon thousands of hardened, well-trained, superbly equipped fighting men to pile quickly aboard comfortable Pullman cars, their ultimate destination, a closely guarded military secret. Not a second was lost. From caboose to head end, get 'em rolling. And within a matter of hours from receipt of the initial order, hundreds of trains loaded with the world's finest soldiers, sailors, and Marines were started moving to embarkation points to take their stand, our stand, against the aggressors. Would the American railroads meet the strain of wartime traffic without delay or confusion? Railroad men know their jobs. They know those jobs well. In the first months of this globe-encircling conflict, they moved more men and more equipment and with greater speed and efficiency than during the entire span of World War I. Yes, the wheels of war are rolling, and there is no longer any question as to the ability or the determination of the American railroads to shoulder their share of the nation's tremendous war effort. Their achievements furnish the unalterable proof. But great as is the demand for the movement of troops and equipment, it still remains only a small part of the real job the railroads are doing. A job so big as to be almost beyond the bounds of human comprehension, the day-by-day mass movement of freight. Only a few years ago, there were those who said the railroads were through, that they belonged to an era fast receding. Well, today, they are literally the lifeline of America, and every day, more than 40,000 trains are started moving, with Santa Fe alone operating as many as 1,800 trains every 24 hours. That's more than 75 trains an hour, a train every 48 seconds of the day and night, to sustain the life and economy on the home front, meanwhile meeting the heavy demands of the nation's war effort. An aircraft factory requires vital parts to maintain production schedules. It's up to the railroads to get them there without delay. A shipyard is running short of steel plate. It's up to the railroads to get it there. There is an acute food shortage in an overcrowded defense area. It's up to the railroads. Are the nation's railroads getting their cargoes through on time? Well, just look at those ships being born through the untiring efforts of thousands of free American skilled workers from rail-transported, prefabricated steel plates. Liberty ships, corvettes, destroyers, carriers, tankers, invasion barges, being built and launched in ever-increasing, never-ending streams as America's answer to the menace of the Nazi U-boat and the boasted invulnerability of the Jap and his conquests. Look at those carloads of beef on the hook, luscious big juicy steaks, and hides for shoe leather, which the railroads are delivering to the nation's busy packing houses. And bacon for America's 130 million industrious citizens at home and abroad. Throughout the 48 states, in country elevators and in the massive storage bins of the cities, tons and more tons of ripe golden grains are being delivered and stored, ensuring ample supplies for domestic consumption and for those hungry nations across the seas. From producer to consumer, potatoes, important freight. From the warm belts of the Pacific Slope, vitamin-rich citrus, delivered to the nation's breakfast table. And planes? Look at them. Deadly pursuit ships and mighty precision bombers to blast and clear the ways for conquering Allied armies, each on its own heralding the steadily approaching doom of the once mighty Axis and its satellites. Yes, the American railroads are getting the freight through, and not only are they getting them through, by their unstinting efforts, they are actually helping to build the ships and planes and tanks and jeeps, are helping make the shells and the munitions to feed into hungry guns just as surely as though they were standing working on the production lines. For production without transportation is a ship without a sail. Both are indispensably interdependent. But not only must the railroads transport the bulk of the finished products to feed into the maw of this hungriest of all wars, to them also falls the vital task of supplying an uninterrupted stream of raw materials to the nation's widespread factories. For the battle of production begins far from the lathes and the mills, deep down under the earth, where men go searching for the raw materials from which will be shaped our victory. From the mountains of Pennsylvania and Colorado, from Illinois and New Mexico, comes coal, torn and blown and scooped from thick veins which for centuries have been preparing for this day, for the all-important job of keeping blast furnaces blasting, until the freedoms of the lands above are once again secure. From the vast reservoirs of Oklahoma, Texas, and the great Southwest, oil, the black gold of mobility and striking power, without which the battles on far-flung invasion fronts, as well as the economy of the home front, would but despair and die. At the outbreak of war, the nation's railroads proposed that they could move 200,000 barrels a day, if they had to. At that time, this was regarded as being hardly more than a daydream. But this was not the first proposal the railroads were to make, and to make good. Not only have loadings passed the 200,000 barrel a day figure, but at one crucial point, the railroads, proving they could meet any emergency, transported 1 million barrels a day. Out of the gaping expanses of open pit mines comes King Copper. Huge mechanical shovels continually eat away at nature's seemingly inexhaustible supply, lifting 8 cubic yards with each ravenous bite. Then it's up to the railroads to get it moving to the smelters, where man again bests nature to extract the golden metal from the rich ore. From the Gulf Coast comes sulfur. Brought to the surface by the ingenious use of forced steam, the yellow chemical soon hardens to become gaudy, flat-topped mountains, then a muffled roar, and a mighty avalanche falls in loosened cascades. Ordinarily moved almost entirely by boat, the submarine forced an end to this method of transport. It was up to the railroads to supply an additional 20,000 cars if this essential of gunpowder was to be delivered to the nation's munitions makers. Well, the cars were found. The munitions makers are being supplied. From New Mexico, potash, another essential of gunpowder and vital ingredient of numberless other products. Rendered from its prehistoric manufacturing plant far below the surface by methods closely akin to the mining of coal, the chunk potash is run to the head of shafts by miniature railroads, there to be raised and ground and extracted before being force-loaded into waiting boxcars, which will transport the crimson chemical to the corners of the nation. And on, from the vast virgin forest of America, logs, and then finished lumber. From Oklahoma and the endless acreage of Texas, cotton. Yes, all the way down to scrap, with the railroads transporting the bulk of the nation's pile and at the same time contributing a large percentage of the total tonnage. And not only must the railroads deliver all of these essentials to the nation's factories without delay, they must get them all there at the right time. But all of this vast and steadily increasing traffic burden is not being handled without difficulties. In addition to the shortage of trained manpower, there is an even more acute shortage of equipment, without which this mighty stream of produce and products would lose momentum. With factories which formerly manufactured rails and equipment now geared to the production of weapons of war, it is no longer a question of will it run. Today, the nation's railroads have only one slogan: if it's got wheels, get it rolling. Before the war, it was customary to run old equipment onto dead tracks, there to be stored for use at some future date. Well, that future date is now, and dead tracks no longer have lines of rolling stock standing idle. Only by calling all usable equipment back into service can the job be done. Locomotives are high on the premium list, and no matter their condition, nothing is impossible. Look at this old slobber bucket, number 3723. She's just another of many locomotives which shop foremen and dismantlers daily start on the road to recovery. But where once there were ample supplies of new parts, Today, nothing is being wasted or discarded. Each and every one of the engine's 25,000 odd units is carefully marked to ensure proper and speedy repair and replacement. Then, each of the various parts is inspected and sent to the shops where machines and the skill of experienced workmen do the impossible, cutting, grinding, reshaping, and rebuilding each worn unit back to unbelievable newness and efficiency. Fire brake is removed and replaced. Acetylene torches cut away and repair all flaws inside the huge boilers. Piston housings are rebored to ensure driving power once the locomotive returns to the rails. And huge wheels, worn and flat from thousands of miles of hard running, are cleaned and dipped and sprayed and lifted again into the shops, where new tires are fitted securely by expanding temperatures. Yes, and on throughout the length and breadth of teeming Santa Fe shops, from Cleburne to Topeka to Richmond, from Albuquerque to San Bernardino and Chicago. Modern miracles of reconstruction and rehabilitation are daily being performed with speed and efficiency heretofore thought impossible. Not only returning to the road equipment which was not too long ago regarded as being irretrievable, but also keeping all other equipment in perfect running condition for the performance of the given task. For locomotives are not the only type of equipment which must be repaired and rebuilt. Look in any car shop and you'll see lines of old gondolas and refrigerator cars and box cars being torn down, rebuilt, and painted to bring them back into immediate service. Look into any foundry where rumbling machines respond to the skilled will of their operators, ever hammering, ever cutting, ever shaping old parts to new, and then melting down what remains to pour and mold again. Look into the metal shops and see sheer weight and deft manipulation shape thick steel as though it might well be the thinness of tinfoil, and gears which must be ground to within 1,000th of an inch, and valves and gauges and air brake meters. In each and every department, the story is the same. This is a war of movement. Let's keep 'em rolling. But let us not neglect the unsung heroes who are always present in the background of the steam and the rumbling wheels, those tireless thousands of loyal workers who are keeping the roadbeds in flawless condition, who are constantly repairing and replacing mile upon mile of worn track, and who almost overnight lay spur lines to enhance the speed and efficiency of crowded rails. Give credit to the tower men who direct the constant flow of heavy traffic, to the bridge crews who daily construct and repair important spans over deep and yawning defiles, to the conductors for their patience and ingenuity, to the local station agent whose day is endless, to the busy ticket salesman and his problems, to the dispatchers who keep the trains rolling on schedule, to the thoroughness of the signal maintainers, to the efficiency of the telegraphers, and to those other thousands of tireless workers, high and low, too numerous to mention. Give the railroad man his due, for each and every one on his own is an important cog which must function smoothly, else confusion and disaster result. Did I hear someone say not to forget the women? Never fear. Every rail that is laid, every train started moving, all freights and passengers carried, require a multitudinous detail of office work. In ever-increasing numbers, women are helping the railroads to maintain their high standards of service to the nation. But don't think that the only jobs women are performing are behind office desks. With thousands of rail employees going into the armed forces, women readily volunteered for heavier duties in the shops. They're holding down man-sized jobs and handling those jobs with comparable skill. Yes, the wheels of war are rolling. From cowcatcher to caboose, the American railroads are winning as important and as tough a battle as has ever been fought. They are keeping faith with sons and husbands and sweethearts who are depending on the railroads to maintain schedules without mishap or delay, else all they possess perish forever. And when victory has been won, the American railroads will have an even more important job, for it will be theirs to carry the bounties of a great and even greater United States of America, a nation grown in technical skill and boundless opportunities, a nation of hundreds of new and better products, a land of food aplenty, and plastics and textiles and more which will flow endlessly over the bands of steel they have preserved and strengthened. Did this nation possess adequate transportation facilities? Would Santa Fe shoulder her share of the tremendous burden? Well, if ever anyone could take justifiable pride in contribution to the peace and decencies of mankind, it is the men and the wheels of the American railroads. It is the wheels and the men of Santa Fe. Let them face the sun and hold their heads ever high, for theirs is a glorious achievement.